Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for another very special edition of WOWSA Live with our host, Ned Dennison. Ned?
Hello, everyone. I'm the chairperson of the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. Today, we have a very distinguished group of individuals, and we're announcing another award. Several years ago, we established the Dale Petranech Award for services to the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. And today we're delighted to announce that Commander Forsberg has been the recipient of this award. I'll give you, and in 1971, he was one of the three individuals who selected honorees and created classes going back to the mid-1960s. He then, for the next 25 years, served as the chief nominator or the president of the organization. We're really not sure. But one thing is absolutely sure, without his massive contribution, we probably wouldn't have a International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. Let me introduce the people and kind of raise your hand. Charles Forsberg, his son. We've got Kevin Murphy, the king of the English Channel. We've got Dr. Chris Stockdale, MBE. And we've got Roger Parsons, who's just coming into our picture. Roger, raise your hand. What an entrance, fantastic. Charles, let's start with you. Tell us about your memories of your father, his swimming, and the multiple organizational roles he had for decades.
Okay, family side, because you had no out of curriculum activities between March and September, because there was always a swim somewhere. So every Friday you got in the car, or not every Friday, but close to. And you had a time drive to the destination, and it was on a clipboard. And you normally arrived within a few minutes of the timetable, and you went through all the waypoints on time. When I actually swam with him, it was the same. It didn't matter where it was, what the currents were, he had them worked out. And he timed it. And you'd arrive within a few minutes of when he planned. I'm not saying he swam any faster or any slower. He certainly didn't swim slower. But that was to somewhere like Loch Lomond. And there'd be a piece of water somewhere, and he'd stop and say, I'm just going to have a swim. And he'd park up. He'd swim half a mile, then get back in the car, and then we'd make up the time. This happened all across Scotland, Northern Ireland. It was, yeah, notable. The other thing was arriving at the house. You never really knew who was going to be in the house because there were visitors' chairs in his office. And some of the people who were there were Joe Grossman, Chris Green, Jean and family. It was always a surprise when you arrived. On one occasion, I arrived there as US Navy captain and his chief petty officer. They'd come to ask for advice on what he'd done 30 odd years earlier. I was still in my uniform, so I was in the Navy at the time. It's the only time I had to stand to attention in my own house. But you never knew who was going to be there. One of his little things that he liked in his organization was the number he looked right, if you remember, out of sight. And I think Chris actually surpassed it in 1 year from about 23 to 33 crossings. He said, I'm just not going to compete with that. And that's the only time I've ever seen him sit back and let someone else take over. But that was it. There were a few other, and I don't landing literally at sandbanks down a pool. It was the Pool Harbour swim. And the sergeant in charge of the landing craft said, lower the door. And that's exactly what the guy did. He just failed to stop. So we didn't so much swim off the ramp as float out of the well. all our kit, which was put into bags to stay dry, some of it worked, some of it didn't. But we didn't know until we got there. We just left the landing craft and swam back up to pool. But he just stood on the, he stood in the well and said, a few of the memories. I can't think of anything else at the moment, but other than the incredible cold in some of the places we went to and the rain. And then the following day, you'd be burnt. But hey, that was swimming.
Chris, why don't you take over from there?
Sorry, was that me?
Yeah, you, Chris.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Wonderful to see you all. And thanks, Ned, for giving me this opportunity to talk about Jerry. he was without doubt the most wonderful friend. I admired him, I loved him, and in a personal way, he was absolutely wonderful to me over many, many years. I first met him in 1977 when he presented me with my channel swimming certificate. And I was in absolute awe of everyone at that time because this was my first long distance swim. I was in a room with people like Jerry, Ray and Audrey Scott, Kevin Murphy, Mike Reed, Alison Street, great triumvirate of British swimming, and I was in absolute awe of everybody. But gradually over the years, I developed a special relationship with Jerry, which didn't revolve so much around meeting in the swimming arena, although we were more friends. And I loved his wit, his humor. He was always encouraging. He was always there for advice. And I have a thick file of letters that he wrote to me. Swim said, no, he won't make it. It's too cold and too long. So I never did Loch Lomond. They're all quite brief, so I won't keep you for too long. One I remember in 1995, Margaret and I were swimming Torbay and we'd finished, and Jerry was doing the veterans swim and finished just a little way after us. And he arrived at the jetty, as he would, stopped at the bottom of the jetty, put on his white shirt, his Channel Swimming Association tie, his grey slacks and his black shiny shoes, lit up his pipe and strolled up the jetty as though he'd just come from Sainsbury's shopping. It was just wonderful to see him and to have it was based upon effort and simple truths and honesty. And Jerry had all of those in abundance. I just want to read to you a little bit of Jerry's own account, which is absolutely priceless, of his for the swim. The night before my swim, I went to a pub in Dover and drank a few pints of light ale. I slept well, rose early, had a good fried breakfast, and none of your big pamby nonsense. He just got on with it. And when I read about that swim in 1957, he accomplished in 30 days, his perseverance, as well as names. He swam in and other achievements. His war record was absolutely amazing. In the Second World War, the Hotspur, the Veil, his daughter, the Marmaluke, and the great distinction.
I think we've lost Chris. One of the things Chris said is that the commander did set the English Channel speed record in that swim. Kevin, on to you.
Well, I suppose my memory, overwhelming memory of Jerry.
Okay.
Oh, right.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I'll come back in.
Okay, my overwhelming memory of Jerry was that he was the old school gentleman. As Chris has indicated, he always seemed to be smartly dressed when he came out of any long distance swim. We were all in sort of scruffy old sweatshirts and whatever, and he was in his shirt and tie and blazer. I was the teenager at the time, and he in the blazer and the tie and the pressed grey slacks. And how he managed to come out of a swim and be smartly dressed like that, I have no idea. The other thing was, and I think I'd like to emphasise this, when I came on the scene, he was the established swimmer. He was the elder statesman. He was the one everybody was in awe of, but he was really, really ready to help others. Absolutely. He would, I was the new kid on the block. He would encourage me. He would advise me. He would, and I was the teenager. He was, I'm not quite sure how old he was, but for a teenager, he seemed quite mature. and yet there was I trying to compete with him, and often not succeeding. In as much as he was faster than me, and it was rather humbling, really. He was the man you always went to for knowledge. I don't think we've referred yet to the fact that he wrote the Swimming Times articles on long distance swimming for many years, and he'd also written the modern long distance swimming book, which was the Bible of open water swimming in the UK. One of the stories that I perhaps should tell is when they got me into it was Joe Grossman, I think, and Gerald Forsberg, and we met, believe it or not, at the RAC club, which was the old school gentlemen's club in London, and there was a marble hall swimming pool there with you had to wear their strange slips, which were sort of the old-fashioned swimming costume with tie each that tied up on each side. In those marble halls is where Joe Grossman, Jerry Forsberg, and I were planned out what was going to happen to the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame, i.e. we were going to go back over the previous 10 years or more and start at the beginning, as it were, and nominate and accept honorees. And as I say, I remember going to the house in Morecambe that was Charles referred to, and I was one of those people that sort of walked in and was in awe of this panelled. They said to me, "Do you remember that, Charles?" It was as I say, he was the old school famous gentleman who always had time to help others.
Tell us your fondest memories, or your least fondest memories. I presume he didn't work for you in the Navy.
I first knew Jerry from his articles in the Swimming Times, which when I was a kid I used to follow quite keenly, about these idiots swimming around in lakes and oceans. And eventually I met Jerry, I think it was about 1968, at the Otter Swimming Club, where the Royal Navy team had a swimming and water polo competition down there. And of course, Jerry was very involved with Otter Swimming Club. And I believe he was the president, wasn't he, Charles?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, the whole time I worked with Jerry, when I was trying to, which means swing from South Sea Pier across the Rhine, I understand we're going at the time that they'd gone in the past. It'd been done twice before, once by Jebbies Wolf and once by Keith Richards. And it took a phenomenal amount of time to do it. So I contacted Jerry, we corresponded for quite a long time about this. And I came up with the idea surely that if a current is moving along a shore, there must be a back current on the shore side of that current. And Jerry said, of course there is. And I said, well, how do I find it? So from then on, for about 2 weeks, I was sat on the shoreline of the Gosport, throwing pieces of wood with markers on, going. And of course, the outcome of that was that I took a 3 piers swim. Unfortunately, Val took 18 seconds off it the next year. Jerry, of course, was of paramount importance, along with 1 or 2 other people involved with the Channel Swimming Association. When I ran the Captain Webb Centennial, the first thing was that we were desperate to hold it on the right day. So it was the Centennial. And of course, Jerry was swimming with the Navy team. One of the great incidents I remember with Jerry, or 2, one of them, and I think I might be wrong, Kevin, you might remember, but the first ever Champion of Champions that Val and I ran, Jerry was the president that year. And I've got this wonderful memory of Jerry looking very statesmanlike in a raincoat and bare feet, starting the race, then handing his raincoat to somebody, putting his goggles on and diving in the water, following the swimmers. And the other thing was at Lake Bala one year, Val and I had bought a small run around boat to help with the swims for the safety or for swimmer protection. And we'd had a special ladder put on the back that made it easier for swimmers to get out of the water. Well, Val and I were both swimming, so my father-in-law, Val's father, and Jerry, when we got out, there was the cheapest pair of people stood there. Jerry in strange clothing because his were all wet because he fell in after he tried to climb on the boat, and to support himself, he grabbed the ladder. So Jerry and the ladder ended up in the lake, and we never saw the ladder again. So, but in summary, Jerry, as somebody, I think Kevin said, was a gentleman's gentleman, and I've never met a more evenly tempered person, a man of fantastic knowledge, particularly the hydrographer side of things. If you had a query about any tide, about rise and fall, about best time starts, finishes, or anything else, he was a go-to guy. And I know that since then, Charles has actually helped me once or twice, following in the family business. So a great guy and a fantastic person to know.
Evan, we're going to come back to you privately about this RAC club meeting, because it is a bit of history we frankly haven't documented. Talk to us about when Jerry handed over the Hall of Fame to Dale Petranech. You look like you got roped in non-executive chairman. Do you remember anything about the handover? Was it 6 bankers' boxes of records?
Even that, no. It was Dale Petranech telling me on one occasion, "You're the chairman." Nobody elected me. Nobody. I've no idea how I was selected. It was just in Dale's mind. And that on another occasion, he referred to me as the president. And I went back to Dale and said, "What am I, chairman or president? And what am I chairman or president of?" And he said, "Well, yeah, you're that's of the committee." And it was never really tied down, and I don't think I was ever really the anything more than just a name, because the person who ran it was Dale, and he just needed somebody to put on the headed notepaper or whatever. It wasn't as organised as you have it now. It was very much Dale ran it, and we all voted, and occasionally some people didn't vote. And I remember Conrad Wennerberg, Connie, I'm not sure whether he voted or didn't vote, but he was there as well.
Charles, I'll ask you to come off mute now. We have a website testimonial to your dad. The CSA has testimonials. The BLDSA has testimonials. I think there's some people in Lake Ontario that have testimonial. He's certainly in the annals of the sport. 5 books and a couple of decades of articles is certainly well remembered. I know Dr. Stockdale also helped design that fabulous memorial on the ocean. Hopefully this award has caught you a little by surprise. Just your reaction to, after all these years, your dad getting yet another award.
Yeah, it's quite funny you should ask, because I was at that little statue by the water only a week or so ago, because that was actually its 20th anniversary of his passing. And it's become a little bit of a monument, and it's amazing how many people seem to have visited it. So I sat in my office I was actually looking out the window of my office across Morecambe Bay, because I've got an office down on the port. And I was just thinking about my father, and then you called. So it was quite a moment, actually. I spoke to my sister last morning. She was also sure how we'll ever follow that act in our family, but we'll find some way of doing it. But no, very, very happy and honoured, and thank you very much.
Chris, you got cut off earlier. Final thoughts?
Yes, if I could just carry on very briefly, just briefly about his war record, which was sensational. And I was just saying that he alone was responsible as a commander for saving thousands of lives at sea. And after the war, he became a marine salvage expert. In fact, one of the most prominent marine salvage experts in the world. And he wrote the Bible of salvage work, Salvage at Sea, which is still used today as a reference point, just as we use modern long distance swimming. And I remember I did a little swim off Elba, and a few weeks later, Jerry wrote to me and he sent me this little book on the front, which he'd written from someone else, comet, the de Havilland comet that had sunk off Elba, which he did. And his last comment in his little booklet was, "We only got 72% of it, bad show." And that was just typical, really, of his humor. As you know, he was awarded with the OBE in 1995, and it was just a wonderful pleasure to be associated. I owe my induction into IMSHOF to Jerry. He tried and tried to have me inducted for many, many years and was ultimately successful. And when he'd been successful, he wrote to me and he said, "Well done, I'm very pleased. But I must tell you, of course, as you well know, your swimming just isn't good enough. But your other contribution to the sport has made the difference." So I was well put in my place about that. I last saw Jerry in September 2000. I'd just done a very poor Windermere. And at the start of the swim, I put a bottle of famous grouse in my canoe because I knew that was his favourite tipple. And I knew that G. Malkin Oxley and Jerry would be at the northern end of the lake when I finished. And of course, it wouldn't be appropriate to mention Jerry without mentioning Jean, who was a wonderful, wonderful friend to Jerry over many, many years. She was a great companion for him, and we all loved Jean dearly. Anyway, I arrived at Ambleside, and there was Jerry, sadly in a wheelchair, looking extremely frail. And I came out of the water and presented him with this bottle of famous grouse, and of course he was duly grateful for it. But I was shocked at how poorly he looked, and I came away with a very heavy heart and very, very sad about it. And of course he died. He passed away in October of that year at the age of 88. A great, great loss to us all. And I shall always remember his wonderful Christmas letters, which were always headlined, "The news in the very briefest." And his Christmas letter, of course, was 1999. And I read that yesterday, and at the bottom it said, "Bye, everybody. Yours, I, Jerry." And he always finished his letters, "Yours, I, Jerry." And I still miss the passing of this wonderful man. You had a wonderful father, Charles. He was a fantastic man. He had such a huge effect on my life, on everybody's life that he met. He was the consummate sportsman, and we can be so proud that he is such a large part of our history. It's just wonderful. And I'm so grateful, Ned, to have had this opportunity just to say a few words. I loved him so much. He was a wonderful friend.
Gentlemen, we'll wrap it up there. Again, I thank you very, very much. Kevin, I will get back to you on this RAC club. And Roger, I want to hear more about this 3-pier swim. And I think they're probably still collecting the bits of wood down in Gosport that you were throwing out there years ago. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Stay on for a moment. I'm going to, I would like Chris, if you could, I'm still rolling. I'm going to cut and edit this. Chris, if you can repeat again the letter you wrote, just from the beginning to the end. I actually want to lead the thing with that letter that you wrote.
This is Jerry's letter after
Jerry's,
his channel.
Yes, Jerry's letter to Chris, I believe it was. If you could
The sound was bad when you were reading the article,
Yeah.
Chris.
The article about him swimming the channel.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I need to put my specs on. Hold on a sec.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, this is just absolutely classic. It really is.
And then
the night
one more,
before my
sorry, one more thing. If you could
swim,
say the
I
date.
went to a pub in foolishness of it. And after all, I had been in serious swimming training for about 2 years. And listen to this, in the first few months of 1957, I swam 729 miles on Murphy, but I reached 9 o'clock, and then the story carries on. And as you know, he was successful after 13 hours, 33 minutes. At the time, a record by 22 minutes. A wonderful swim.